I knew her since college, and I'll get that out of the way first. The past few days have shown a different side of her that's a little surprising because Kate is her best friend from college. My wife, Nancy, wanted to do a mini talent show at our reception, and she talked it up beforehand too. She read a poem that she made for the event, and Kate performed a song that she wrote. Long story short, one of the guests who I invited is into producing, and he reached out to her after she performed. They exchanged information, and Kate was really excited. He wanted to network with her following the reception, and she even thanked my wife for hosting the talent show over text. But Nancy became really bitter about it, and that's why I'm writing this. She hasn't responded to Kate's message, and she said she regretted doing the talent show too. She also asked me to block Edward, the producer, on my socials/contacts, and I told her that that seemed a bit much. She didn't like my answer and said that I was wrong to not take her side after just getting married, but I told her that she should be happy for her friend. She didn't like that either and vented to some in our friend group about how Kate was bragging, but some of them disagreed. She said she didn't want to hang out with them for the time being, and that included me too. 2 of her girlfriends even texted me that she was overreacting, and that they were also surprised to see her act that way. They also asked if she was okay too. My dad is suggesting counseling and said that asking me to remove friends is an unhealthy way to start a marriage, and I'm honestly more than a little scared. I asked if she'd be open to counseling, but she said there was no need because Kate was her friend first, and I shouldn't choose Kate over her. I just want to ask what to do next, since she refused counseling and sees no issue with cutting off our friends. Now for the 2-week update. It's been a little over 2 weeks since my first post, and I've had some time to try and process. A lot of it still feels surreal having known her since my early 20s and the 180 after the wedding. I want to address a few things that were asked in my first post before getting to the update. Nancy and Kate were not the only ones who performed in the talent show. During planning, Nancy said she wanted to showcase her friends and how awesome proud she was to have them. She also said it was a bonding thing between her girlfriends from our friend group, and the girls were the ones who performed. However, given her post-reception 180, it really surprised me in comparison to her pre-talent show mindset. A few people commented that she didn't need to have a talent show to read the poem she made for the wedding. She could have just read it at any time as the bride. The reason I'm writing this post is because of something else that came up and led to a conversation. We had a vacation coming up, but she no longer wants to go on it. In the time since my first post, she's continued to have random mood swings due to thinking about Kate. Sometimes that's venting about how Kate would have nothing without her, or getting really quiet and distant, even while eating. She's also still upset at her girlfriends who she vented to about Kate. But when they disagreed and called her out for being bitter over a talent show no one forced her to have, she told me to cut off our friend group, along with blocking the producer girlfriends too. When I disagreed, she became distant and said I was choosing them over her. My dad suggested counseling and talking to her again, because asking me to cut off friends was an unhealthy start to the relationship. So I talked to her after my first post and asked if she'd be open to it, but she said there was no need because all I had to do was cut them off. She also said I was choosing them over her and that she wouldn't go on our vacation until I did. When I asked her why Kate bothered her so much, she said she tried to publish in the past a novel and didn't get any hand-me-downs then. But when I reminded her that my friend was a producer on the side in his basement, she said I should have known better than to invite him, as if I should have known he would have liked Kate's song. When I told her that I wouldn't block the producer entire friend group, she said I was entitled like Kate and that she wanted a break because I didn't care about her. I told her that I love her, but didn't think it was healthy to cut off everyone. I also told her that she should be happy for her friend because Kate was really grateful, but she didn't seem to care. She has since gone to stay with her parents and left some of her things in our apartment. I talked to my dad after she ignored texts/calls for a few days, and he suggested bringing up an annulment because it had gone too far. Her parents have also ignored my calls, but I want to clarify Kate's text before I'm done. Kate wasn't arrogant or anything to Nancy. All she did was thank her for putting together the talent show that allowed her to network with the producer after the wedding, and she also offered to take her out to lunch as thanks. There was no arrogance from Kate, and the producer is also engaged, as some people inquired about too. I'm just really surprised and hurt that her bitterness turned me into a bad guy for inviting my producer friend as if I was supposed to see into the future and not invite him. Now, for the final update. Just wanted to come back to conclude this because it's been helpful to hear opinions and get everything out. A lot of people asked how I was in messages, and there were too many to reply to. We are currently in the process of a divorce. She's staying with her parents, and I've had some time to process and see things differently. I want to touch on two things that have happened since my update. The first is a Facebook post she made about me and the guests. In her post, she said she was supposed to win and that it was an unwritten rule for the bride to win, as if wedding talent shows are normal. She also accused them of smiting her on her day, when no one knew about the show beforehand except her participating friends. She then accused me of taking Kate's side instead of comforting her as her new husband, but taking her side meant cutting off our friend group as she had in the aftermath. I don't know how her parents feel after she called out both sides of the guests, but I really don't care at this point. She also wanted me to cut off my producer friend, Edward, who approached Kate after she sang her original song and asked if they wanted to collab sometime. And I want to focus on that. I talked to Edward recently about everything, including how she wanted me to cut him off, and he couldn't believe how much it affected her. Nancy and I watched a football game at his house with him and his fiancée some months back, and he has a day job in an office. When I told him about how Nancy was jealous of Kate's big break, he couldn't believe it and said that he planned to let Kate use his audio interface to plug into her guitar and record a high-quality instrumental of her original, along with his microphone too. He also said he wasn't great at mixing and was taking online courses to learn, so he was going to suggest that she commission someone to enhance the files they'd record, because he was far from a professional. He's a really chill guy. But he couldn't stop laughing over how Nancy thought that he was all that. He only wanted to use his interface to give her a high-quality recording after learning that she didn't have equipment and recorded her original on her phone. He and his fiancée planned to have her for dinner, just like they had me and Nancy over for football, and record it in the basement afterwards. Looking back in hindsight, it's crazy how you can be blinded to things, but I never imagined just how crazy she could get. I didn't say this in my first two posts because I thought it might overshadow her actions, but she sometimes posts about women empowerment on her socials, and I recently thought about that for one reason. When I asked her why she wanted to have a talent show, she said she wanted to emphasize the importance of having good friends because they were important to a relationship. But as I look at it now, perhaps it was never about that. Nancy was bothered the second that Kate's song got a better reception than her, and she doubled down when she vented to two of her girlfriends after the wedding, who called her out for being jealous. And that made her demand I also cut off our friend group. To everyone who asked what her poem was about, it was about women empowerment and the importance of having good friends and family when starting a family. And she told me the premise beforehand, although she never showed me the poem. She wanted it to be a surprise, but I never had a chance to see it on paper after the wedding for reasons. Many people also corrected how she said that Kate received a hand-me-down opportunity at the wedding, but the proper term was handout, as many corrected. I really appreciate everyone who offered advice, as it helped a lot mentally, not to mention looking back at how crazy it all was. Just hoping to fully get over it as time goes on, but I've gotten over some of it recently. Now for the update. I really thought my last update would be my last, but Nancy apparently had other ideas. This update doesn't really involve me and is mostly for those who have reached out via DMs because I can't reply to all of them, so this is more convenient. Months later, I'm grateful that everything came out when it did, and we are officially no longer together. She wanted nothing to do with me after accusing me of taking Kate's side by refusing to cut off friends who said she overreacted when she vented about Kate stealing her thunder by getting a better reception for her song, among other hateful things she said about her, and that made the process easier. However, months later, Nancy's still not over it, but I want to give an update on Kate first. Kate reached out to me towards the end of the divorce process because Nancy took out her frustration on her, and she told me some things I didn't know. I mentioned in my first update that Kate sent a text thanking Nancy for the opportunity to sing at the wedding after it led to her meeting the producer, and she sent shortly after the reception. However, unbeknownst to me, Nancy sent her DMs blaming her for the divorce before it was official, and that was news to me. She told me she was sorry for performing at the wedding along with the divorce, but I told her that she had nothing to apologize for. Her best friend, Nancy, asked her to perform, and she simply did. But Nancy didn't stop at DMs. Since my last update and the divorce becoming official, Nancy went online to make her feelings public, not just about Kate, but the friends who said she was overreacting too. She said that her friends should have talked her out of the talent show, because friends look after each other, when the talent show was her idea entirely that she pushed for against suggestions otherwise. She accused them of being fake friends who never had her back and sided with Kate over her, and she had the nerve to tag them too. However, she left the worse for Kate. She accused Kate and her friends of setting her up on her day, and she made a separate Facebook post to rant about Kate. She also called her a bee, among other things. But she also disclosed some mental health challenges, medications from Kate's past, and it was petty and very inappropriate. I want to reiterate that Kate was her best friend long before me, but she also disclosed a very personal event that I never knew about from Kate's life, which was wrong, and it led to people finding out that Kate hadn't told and caused her a lot of stress from what I've heard. Some of the people in Nancy's friend group reached out to me before the divorce too, and one of them we'll call Hannah, who knew Nancy before me too, said that she knew about Nancy's struggles to publish as she vented years back, after I told her about my talk with Nancy, where she brought up her publishing struggles, and she said that many of them tried to encourage her. However, she never saw that jealous side of her despite knowing her for much longer, and she thinks it was the culmination of wedding stress among other things. But she didn't want to chalk it up to just that because she said that that was a deeper insecurity. She also told me to not beat myself up too much because her friend group never saw that side of her too, and they knew her for years before me. Nancy's friend group has since cut her off, but the last thing I'll say is on Kate. Kate and her friends have been really supportive and even apologized for not talking her out of the talent show beforehand. But I told them that they had nothing to apologize for because Nancy accused me of inviting my producer friend and not magically knowing that he would have networked with Kate. Hannah said that Kate's been really hurt about the sensitive posts and having to explain to people she never told. She also said that Kate's thinking of trying to go after Nancy legally, but she's not sure if anything can be done since it was on Facebook, now deleted, although she got screenshots. But it's apparently taken a toll on her mental health to the point that she's trying to see her options. I won't come back to this again because it doesn't really involve me at this point, but I'm trying my best to be supportive of her too, because she didn't deserve any of this. But I hope it all works out for her in time, whether she decides to pursue legally or not. Am I the idiot for refusing to let my brother use my property for his wedding after he called me a crackhead? So I, male 37, have a younger brother, Tom, 26M, who's getting married in 3 months. A year ago, when he and his fiancée were planning their wedding, they were struggling to find an affordable venue. I own a vacation property with a large yard that's been used for a couple of small weddings before, so I offered it to him as a wedding venue, rent-free. My only condition was that I wanted to be part of the wedding party, which he agreed to. Everything seemed fine. Last week, Tom and I got into a small argument. It really wasn't a big deal, but a couple of days later he texted me and said he and his fiancée decided to downsize their wedding party, and I was no longer going to be a groomsman. I was shocked because I thought this was set in stone a year ago. I called him to ask what was going on, and he said it wasn't personal, just that they wanted to keep things small and intimate and didn't feel like they needed me in the wedding party. I was pretty hurt, but I didn't say anything at the time. Then it occurred to me, if I'm not important enough to be in his wedding party, why should I host the wedding at my place? So I called him again and told him that since I wasn't going to be part of the wedding, they'd need to find another venue. Now, Tom and his fiancée are furious. They say they can't afford another venue at this point, and that I'm ruining their big day. My parents are also upset and say I should just let it go and still host the wedding. I feel like I was doing them a huge favor, and they essentially uninvited me from being part of the most important day of their lives. I don't think I'm wrong to retract my offer, but now everyone's making me feel guilty, so am I the idiot for canceling the venue? Now for a few comments. Commenter number 1, downvoted. You're the idiot. It's very inappropriate for you to manipulate someone into being in their wedding. It's immature to withdraw your offer of the venue because they can't afford much and you didn't get your way. For their sakes, I hope they can find a new venue so that they don't have to deal with you and your behavior, and they can exercise their justifiable right to not invite you. OP doesn't play well with others. Then OP replied, I don't really feel like I'm manipulating anyone. I figured my only brother would want me there since we're family. It feels like he isn't telling me what the real reason is. He doesn't want me there, and if he doesn't want to treat me like family, I guess I feel like I can return the favor. Commenter number 2, petty, just like you should be. It was an agreement between the two of you. Venue rent-free, but you are part of the wedding party. Your brother decided to punish you the wrong way. As long as he took back his part of your contract, you are no longer forced to honor your part. But it's too late for them to find something. You should tell them that as long as your brother can't honor his part of your deal, you're okay for them to do the venue at the same place, but for X amount, payable right now because, well, the confidence is broken. Maybe it'll force your brother to tell you the real reason why he doesn't want you anymore in his wedding. Commenter number 3, I am curious. Why didn't your brother ask you to be in the wedding to begin with? You say you made it a condition for him to use your property and he agreed. Why would it be a condition? If he didn't ask you even before the property was offered, why? Do you two not really get along or not that close? What was this argument about? Now you say it wasn't a big deal, but maybe you don't think so. But he does. What happened? For him to make up that excuse, which you know that is the deal, tells me he didn't want you in the wedding party to begin with. In that regard, I don't blame you. I think you need to elaborate regarding your relationship with your brother. Now, for the update. Okay, so if anyone wants to see my original post, here it is. I was having a hard time believing my brother when he told me they were downsizing the wedding party just to make it more intimate. But that's all he kept saying when I would ask for the real reason. In all honesty, my brother and I aren't that close, which I'm sure is obvious from my last post. After my emotions settled down a bit, I told my brother I wanted to talk to him. He wasn't responding to me, so I said I wanted to talk to him about potentially letting them still use my vacation house. Not totally the truth, but it seemed like a good way to get him to talk. He finally responded but said I couldn't come over. He would only meet me somewhere public, which seemed weird. We ended up meeting at a bar late last night that I like near my place, and I straight up just asked him why he was really kicking me out of his wedding, and I would only consider letting them use my vacation house if he told me the truth. He was getting pretty fidgety and looking away from me, and finally told me the truth. Apparently, his fiancée heard that I may do a bit of coke here and there for fun, and she told him that she didn't want a crackhead in her wedding. He said he actually kind of agreed with her and was disappointed in what I was doing. I told him if I'm too much of a crackhead to be there, then they really shouldn't want to use a crackhead's house for their wedding, and I left. I don't really see how it impacts them, what I do in my free time, but I really don't care to be there now if that's what they think of me. I haven't said a word to him since then, but I'm guessing I won't be hearing from him again soon. I do coke maybe a handful of times a year recreationally with some people that I party with. Obviously, this gossip traveled through the grapevine where circles overlapped and got to them somehow. I wasn't discovered because I'm an addict. Like some have said, it's more common than you think. You'd be surprised who does it. You must have a drug problem for them to react that way about it. My brother's fiancé comes from a very religious and conservative family. They think anyone that does a hard drug must be a degenerate and is going to hell. That's the funny part about her calling me a crackhead. Crack is whack. She clearly doesn't understand coke is different, but I'm not going to go on a mission to educate her. It would be wasted effort on my part. You can be successful in life and recreationally use drugs. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Honestly, pretty much anyone I know that does coke has plenty of money and a great job, or they married someone rich, inherited money. Well, after scrolling through a decent amount of comments, I've come to the conclusion that I'm obviously a terrible douchebag with an enormous drug problem that only thinks about myself and is extremely conceited. Some parts of that may be true, but I do care about my family and try to help my parents in the way that I know how. For those of you that are familiar with Fight Club, I am a single-serving friend kind of person. I don't really get close with many people, and I have a hard time staying in one place. That's why I have a job where I need to travel all the time. I like the variety and the challenge of it, settling down, having kids. All that makes me super uncomfortable. Obviously, I'd be a terrible father, so there's no way I'll have kids. Snip, snip. My brother is a settled-down kind of guy, and thinking about it, that's probably why he doesn't like me. I wanted to be a groomsman for him because I wanted to be a part of something in his life, but in a capacity I can handle. One last note. I've got awesome parents that love me for who I am, and they know I love them even if I'm not around a ton. They worked super hard to raise us and give us everything we needed when they came from a poorer background. I help them how I know I can. Not everyone shows they care in the same way you do, so chill and don't think I'm in butt, because my way of caring is mostly financial. Peace out, friends. Now for a few important comments. Commenter number 1, I'm getting older. I'm seeing just how many people actually do coke, and it's usually occasionally has completely changed my perspective. Also, crack and coke are very, very different. R.I.P. Whitney. That's a fool reason. Do they think you're going to be strung out during the wedding? They want the crackhead's rental property, but not the crackhead? Make it make sense? Not the idiot, OP replied. I use how you're describing. You're 100% correct. I don't touch crack, just recreational coke, and I am very functional in my life. Probably not healthy, but I see it like alcohol. I'm not harassing it, so I'm doing okay. My brother didn't say who they heard it from, but I could guess a handful of people that would be in a party group I hang out with that news like that could travel from. If they didn't hear it through the grapevine, they never would have known. So I obviously wouldn't have gone to their wedding strung out. A pretty large number of people don't get that. You're absolutely right. Commenter number 2. You are a crackhead, therefore we don't want you around our wedding. However, we still would very much like to use your crack house as our wedding venue. Commenter number 3. What I hate is it wasn't like they were concerned for OP's health and well-being, just how things impact them. If it is such a big problem, it should be about his health. I'd never talk to them again and make them get a new venue. Commenter 4. I mean, coke isn't very good for you, but you and your property should be a package deal. If your behavior is so bad they don't want you in the wedding, then they shouldn't want your place either. Am I the idiot for leaving my lazy boyfriend who thinks cooking and cleaning are my job? Since moving in with my boyfriend, I have somehow become the only one doing kitchen duty. Well, most duties actually. I do all the laundry, I take the trash out to the bins, do all the cleaning in the bathroom, I dust the furniture, then the kitchen duties, I do all grocery shopping, I make the menu, I do all the cooking, and then do the dishes and clean the sink counters. I feed and water the cats and dog. The cats are his. He does lawn duty. We live in a condo with a 20-square-foot yard, and half of it is covered in concrete, and he Swiffers the floor a couple times a week. Everything else is on me. We both work full-time and split the bills evenly. I actually work more than him. He works 4 10-hour shifts a week, and I work 6 8-hour shifts. Obviously, this is now starting to cause lots of resentment. I have tried just not doing things, but they don't get done. I can't live in filth, and I won't let his cat suffer because he doesn't notice the bowls are empty or the litter box is gross and full, so I break down and do it. I have tried asking him to do things. They still don't get done, or at least not in a timely fashion. He has forgotten to take the trash bins to the curb, causing us to have an excess amount of bags for a week, or left the leftovers out all night, causing them to spoil when I asked him to put the food in Tupperware. A month ago, I was super frustrated. I was working second shift instead of first like I normally do because a coworker had a childcare emergency and I was being nice. I was coming home from work at 10 p.m., super hungry, and of course my boyfriend hadn't made dinner. And he has the nerve to complain about being starving when he's been home 5 hours. Even making something simple, we weren't eating till 11:30 or so, and then he was going straight to bed, leaving me with cleaning up and putting the leftovers away. I ended up telling my boyfriend how crazy stressed I was keeping up with everything in the household. I felt pathetic, but I was basically begging him to make things more equal. He seemed to understand and promised to do more. And for a couple weeks, he kinda did. He made the grocery order, cleaned the litter boxes, grilled for us twice. But that didn't last for long, and somehow I still was responsible for reminding him to help or assigning him these jobs. This last week, my boyfriend has been on vacation from work. He had so much PTO racked up that he had to take time off because he couldn't earn any more. I still worked by normal 48 hours, 6A, 2P. I was getting home from work around 2:30 to hear my boyfriend complain about being hungry and asking to make some lunch. This has completely set me off, and I've lost so much attraction to him. I refused every time, causing him to have an attitude with me. When I got off work yesterday, I was exhausted and fell asleep on the couch. We had discussed the day before we would be having burgers that night for dinner, something he likes to make and that are actually really good when he does. But I woke up at 7 p.m. to him playing video games in our bedroom and asking, "When's dinner?" I left him to game and pattied myself a burger, fried it, and ate my supper alone at the kitchen table. I cleaned up my mess and sat down in the living room to watch some TV. Sometime later, he comes out and again asks, "When's dinner? Are you still making burgers?" I told him I wasn't feeling good and not hungry. He ended up just eating some chips and salsa, too lazy to even make a frozen pizza. We go to bed, and this morning he complains about being starving, asking for pancakes or something more filling for breakfast than cereal since he didn't get dinner. I don't know how much longer this can go on. Now for a few comments. Is this rage bait? 'Cause I feel rage. How long are you locked into your lease? OP replied, February, unfortunately. Now for the 3-day update. Hi, had many people ask for an update to my original post in comments and in direct messages, so here goes. Sunday, my boyfriend and I had a lengthy discussion about the household inequality. I once again stressed with him how overworked I was, that I was losing attraction to him, that I was rethinking a future, because being his mom was never something that I wanted to do. My boyfriend finally seemed to get that this was a make it or break it situation. He confided that he enjoyed being spoiled by me and apologized for taking advantage. He cried over the thought of losing me. He promised to do more without asking and even swore to start putting together a chore. On to today. This morning, my boyfriend and I were getting ready for work, and he asked me if I would be okay making dinner tonight because he was planning on mowing and weeding after work. I agreed, although I was thinking that he should have mowed this weekend, especially since the last 4 days he said, "I'm going to mow tonight." but it needs done, so whatever. He then made a comment about how it makes sense for you to make dinner most days anyways. I asked why he figured that, and his reasoning was that I get off work earlier. I just kind of laughed and asked if they means he will be on dinner and dishes his 3 days off, and he made some kind of remark about it being nice if he could have one day free to himself a week and his hobby Saturday that can keep him out late. This really pissed me off, because who got off work earlier didn't matter when I worked the second shift last month, and he gets home before 5:30. So it's not like he couldn't relax for an hour or so before cooking, and I will never have a free day to myself. Plus, since moving in together, anytime we argue about him not contributing his reasoning in sync is I get off work earlier, not taking into account that I work 2 days more than him. It was obvious then that he hadn't really learned anything. I told him so and started crying because that's when I realized I was done and it was over. I didn't want to have that conversation right before going to work. So tonight, I'll be officially ending our relationship. So I've been pretty useless at work today, making phone calls and preparing my next move. I sent an email to my old boss. I'm sure if they have any positions open, he would be glad to have me back. And a friend has been nice enough to offer me her spare room until my BFF lease runs out. Unfortunately, my landlord was not willing to remove me from lease because he doesn't think boyfriend can pay for it himself, so I'm just preparing to send him half of rent until February. But as soon as I have employment lined up back home, I'll be moving out. Until then, I'm cool sleeping on an air mattress in our spare room. I am very sad. I loved him, still do. This is my first time moving in with a boyfriend, and I thought I did everything right. Like we didn't rush, waited a year and 10 months to take this step and made sure he could take care of his shoot without me, but it still ended up this way. Now for a few comments. Welp, someday you'll be grateful to him for making it so brutally clear that he didn't intend to change a damn thing. The painful cluelessness of moping about one day to himself and still not realizing that was him informing you that you never get a day off of caring for him. His time was his, and your time was his. Congrats on making a tough and quick exit. And don't be too hard on yourself. You learned he could take care of his shoot without you. But once he had acquired your services, he chose not to. You can't perfectly protect against someone who has made that choice. Give yourself all the permission in the world to be angry with him. He was always capable. He made a choice in how he treated you. Now for a comment. Don't send your boyfriend half the rent. Submit it directly to the landlord with a note every month clearly stating that that is your half of it.